Sit back and enjoy 2 hours of fascinating facts you didn't know. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. Let's get started. QR codes were inspired by the game Go. In this board game, players know where the pieces are even if they are slightly out of position or not perfectly aligned. This same idea was the principle behind making QR codes error-resistant. The ridged edges of coins, known as reading, were originally introduced as an anti-fraud measure, since in the past, some people scraped the edges to obtain gold or silver when coins were made of those metals. Therefore, these ridges made it easy to detect if any coin had been tampered with. This tradition continues today, but only for aesthetic purposes. Having 101 Dalmatians would cost a fortune in real life. The average monthly cost of maintaining a single dog is the equivalent of $150, including food, veterinary care, vaccines, accessories, and so on. If multiplied by the number of dogs, it would be $15,150 per month, which would total $181,800 per year, an income earned by less than 1% of the world's population. So it does not seem like a very good idea. The big maple leaf coin, made by the Royal Canadian Mint in Canada, is one of the largest gold coins in the world, weighing 100 kilograms. Its face value is 1 million Canadian dollars, but because it is made of pure gold, its real value is much higher. A total of 5 of these coins were created, and in 2017, one of them was stolen from a museum in Berlin and was supposedly melted down. In the Philippines, there is banana ketchup. It is a popular condiment made from banana, sugar, vinegar, and spices. It began to be used due to a tomato shortage in the mid-20th century, and to this day, it continues to be used in most dishes in Filipino households. Chimpanzees have such frequent and loud flatulence that scientists sometimes locate them in the jungle by following those sounds. The smallest snowman in the world measures only 2.7 microns, less than the thickness of a human hair. It was made with tiny silica spheres and platinum arms. The eyes and mouth were created with an ion beam. Mosquitoes can survive being hit by a raindrop, even though it is 50 times their weight and would be equivalent to a bus hitting a human. The reason dogs lift their leg when urinating is not to avoid getting dirty. It is because they are marking their territory and leaving their mark as high up as they can to show that they are intimidating. William Wrigley Jr. started by selling soap and offered baking powder as an incentive to buy it. When he discovered that baking powder was more popular, he switched to selling it instead and gave chewing gum to his customers as an incentive. And the same thing happened. Chewing gum was more popular, so he dedicated himself to selling it and soon founded the Wrigley Company. There is a theory that cats hate water because they can detect all the chemicals in tap water that reaches homes with the help of their highly sensitive noses, preferring natural water from rivers, lakes, or the sea. But not everyone accepts this theory, since there may be other reasons related to their evolution. The pygmy hippopotamus named Mu Deng, who was born in July 2024 and went viral on the internet because of her appearance, will grow to weigh up to 606 pounds. This species of hippopotamus is endangered, with fewer than 2,000 remaining in the wild. The zoo in Thailand where Mu Deng lives doubled its daily visitors in recent months. The wood frog can survive frozen for up to 6 months thanks to a process called cryoprotection. During the winter, its metabolism stops and it accumulates glucose in its tissues, preventing damage. When spring arrives, it thaws and resumes activity without suffering negative effects. The tallest statue in the world is the Statue of Unity in Gujarat, India, with a height of 597 feet. This monument, inaugurated in 2018, honors Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, a key figure in the independence and unification of India. To put its height into perspective, it is twice as tall as the Statue of Liberty and 4 times taller than Christ the Redeemer in Rio de Janeiro. Omo is a very unusual giraffe because she is white. She lives in Tanzania, and although she is now able to avoid threats from lions and hyenas due to her age, she is in danger because hunters want her as a trophy. In December 2016, there were moments when the city of Chicago was colder than the surface of the planet Mars. Glass gem is a unique variety of corn, known for its kernels in many different colors, resembling a rainbow. If you add up the days, women spend around 4 years of their lives menstruating. If you consider an average of cycles from adolescence to menopause, with bleeding lasting 3 to 7 days each month, the total can amount to thousands of days. On the famous shopping site eBay, you can even buy a piece of a meteorite. There are specialized sellers who offer certified fragments from documented falls, some with laboratory analyses confirming their composition. Prices vary depending on rarity, size, and origin, and many collectors purchase them as scientific or display pieces. Newborn babies can support their own weight for up to 2 minutes when hanging from a bar. This was discovered by a certain Dr. Robinson in the late 19th century when he had 60 babies hang from canes. When Napoleon arrived in Egypt in 1798, the Sphinx was still buried up to its neck. It was not until 1936 that the sand was removed to reveal the base as we know it. Treadmills were invented in 1818 to torture English prisoners. The device forced inmates to walk for hours on a wheel with steps, generating energy to grind grain or pump water. It was seen as punishment and a method of discipline, until over time it evolved into the exercise machine we know today. 180 years ago, it was ordered that the pyramids of Egypt be dismantled and that their blocks be used to build dams on the Nile River. The engineer in charge of the project did not want to do it, but he knew that if he refused, they would bring someone else to do it, so he prepared false cost reports. This guy saved one of the wonders of the world. The private school Bill Gates attended was at the time one of the only schools in the world with a computer. One of the most intense action sequences in the film Total Recall from 1990 was filmed at the Chabacano station of the Mexico City metro system. This location was chosen because of its futuristic appearance at the time. They even used one of the trains, which was painted gray. When the Golden Gate Bridge was being built, the chief engineer insisted that a protective net be installed despite its exaggerated cost of $130,000. During 4 years of construction, the net saved 19 people from death. On average, we breathe 8,409,600 times each year. This figure is based on an average of about 16 breaths per minute at rest, although it can vary depending on age, level of physical activity, and health status. If you multiply it by the years of life, the result is impressive. Over the course of a lifetime, the lungs can perform hundreds of millions of cycles without us even noticing. The United States Secret Service once organized an operation against a tabletop role-playing game company called Steve Jackson Games because they believed its manual GURPS Cyberpunk was a handbook for hackers. In the end, the company received $300,000 in damages after it was discovered that everything had been a mistake. Walt Disney World in Orlando used to operate as a practically autonomous entity in Florida. This allowed Disney to function almost like an independent local government. However, there were significant changes in 2023 when control passed to the state of Florida. This special district continues to operate as a local governmental entity, but no longer under Disney's direct control. The creator of Pokémon, Satoshi Tajiri, came up with the idea of creating pocket monsters based on his childhood experience collecting cocoons and watching them transform into butterflies. There is a volcano in Tasmania that expels black lava that is so cool for lava that once a person fell into it and survived. In reality, it is not lava in the traditional sense, but a flow of mud and cold volcanic material associated with Mount Napier, formed by ancient basaltic eruptions. In certain cases, the dark material may appear to be recent lava, but its temperature is much lower than that of an active flow, which explains how someone could fall in and get out alive, although not without injuries. Japan is the country with the highest number of vending machines, with more than 5.5 million installed, which is approximately one machine for every 23 people. In second place is China, where there are more than 300,000. In that country, this industry is experiencing exponential growth. Prescription medication bottles are orange or light brown because of their ability to prevent ultraviolet light from degrading the pills, which can be photosensitive and ruined by photochemical reactions, while still allowing enough light to pass through so they can be easily seen. There is a live streaming service to watch wild animals in Africa. It is called Africam, and it allows you to watch elephants, giraffes, zebras, and other wild species 24 hours a day. It uses cameras located in nature reserves and private parks, broadcasting in real time without narration, which allows viewers to observe authentic behaviors such as migrations, predator-prey interactions, or unusual nighttime activities. Nuclear power plants have saved more than 1.8 million lives since 1971 because they do not produce pollutants. This estimate comes from studies that compare nuclear energy with plants that burn coal or oil, which are responsible for millions of premature deaths from air pollution. Although nuclear energy generates radioactive waste that must be handled with extreme care, during normal operation, it emits very low amounts of carbon dioxide and pollutant particles. Frida Kahlo painted 55 self-portraits, many of which have reached record prices at auctions. In 2021, her work, Diego and I, sold for $34.9 million, setting a record for a Latin American artist. King Philip IV and Mariana of Austria appear in the famous painting Las Meninas by Diego Velázquez, created in 1656, although they can only be seen through the reflection of a mirror on the back wall. In the composition, Velázquez himself also appears, painting, which leads to the question of whether the king and queen are part of the scene or merely observers. There are different interpretations, but no accepted answer. The first known mention of baseball appeared in the Whitehall Evening newspaper in 1749, confirming that the game originated in England and not in the United States. The bird photo booth is a bird feeder that takes a picture of every bird that comes to visit you. Thanks to the website Kickstarter, this product was able to be funded. A study conducted in 1993 showed that the maximum power a horse can generate is 18,000 watts, which is approximately equal to 24 horsepower. This confirms that James Watt, who invented the unit of horsepower in the 18th century, miscalculated when estimating a horse's strength to compare it with the energy of a steam engine. Cyanobacteria, also known as blue-green algae, are key microorganisms in global photosynthesis. They convert solar energy into chemical energy stored in biomass at a rate of approximately 450 terawatts, representing between 20 and 30% of all photosynthetic productivity on the planet. Their ability to fix carbon and generate oxygen makes them essential for ecosystems and global climate regulation. The month of January is named after Janus, the Roman god with two faces, one looking to the past and the other to the future. Janus evolved into Januarius, then into Enero, and that is why it is called January in English. For having been James Bond, Daniel Craig has the privilege of being able to take any Aston Martin he wants from the factory for the rest of his life. Much better than Robert Downey Jr.'s Burger King coupon. The original patent for the fire hydrant was lost in a fire, which creates a certain irony. The inventor George Smith registered it, but the complete file was destroyed in the United States Patent Office fire of 1836. Despite this setback, Smith is recognized as the inventor of the first hydrant, although others also contributed to the development of the modern design. The longest conveyor belt in the world is located in the Sahara Desert, specifically in Bukra, in the disputed territory of Western Sahara. This belt, which measures 98 kilometers in length, transports phosphates from the mines to the port. There are rogue planets that wander endlessly through space without entering any orbit. It is said that they are more common than the stars themselves. These worlds, known as rogue or interstellar planets, may have formed around a star and then been ejected by gravitational interactions. Detecting them is difficult, but some have been identified through gravitational microlensing and infrared observations. There are more tigers in captivity in Texas than in the wild worldwide. The chimichanga is a dish made from a flour tortilla filled and fried. It is like a fried burrito. There are 2 restaurants in the United States that claim to have created it. However, the origin of the word and the dish is believed to date back to the early 20th century, when Chinese immigrants in Sonora made chun kung using Sonoran-style flour tortillas. The lightning bolts you can see when you touch a plasma lamp are visible because the sphere contains a noble gas at low pressure, usually neon or xenon. When high-frequency electricity passes through this gas, the electrons become excited and collide with each other, releasing energy in the form of colorful light. It is a process similar to what occurs in the Northern Lights. 21% of casualties in the Second World War for the United States Army were caused by friendly fire. These situations occurred due to identification errors, communication failures, or poorly coordinated bombings, especially in night combat or low visibility conditions. Over time, these incidents led to improvements in recognition systems, training, and coordination protocols between units. Stephen King usually sells the rights to some of his short stories for $1 so that film students can use them to make their movies. The writer calls them dollar babies. On the YouTube show Hot Ones, where celebrities are interviewed while eating chicken wings with increasingly spicy sauces, Only a few guests have given up and failed to eat the last wing, including musician DJ Khaled, basketball player Shaquille O'Neal, who did not finish the final wing, comedian Ricky Gervais, and rappers Lil Yachty, Chance the Rapper, and recently Ice Spice. In the Middle Ages, before understanding bird migration, people had extravagant beliefs about bird transformations. For example, there was a firm belief that barnacle geese were born from barnacles that grew on pieces of floating wood or transformed from them. This belief was so widespread that some even considered these geese to be fish and allowed them to be eaten during the tradition of Lent. In 1950, Venezuela had the fourth highest gross domestic product per capita in the entire world, behind only the United States, Switzerland, and New Zealand. The most powerful radio antenna in the world could cover almost half the globe at night. People living in that area could hear the antenna's audio through their kitchen pots and through mattresses with metal springs. The movie Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, starring Jim Carrey and Kate Winslet, has more literal titles in different regions of the world. While in Latin America, it is called Eternal Sunshine of a Mind Without Memories, in Spain, it is called Forget Me, and in Italy, it is Se mi lasci ti cancello, which means, if you leave me, I erase you. In 2002, Stuart Drummond, who played H'Angus, the mascot of the Hartlepool United soccer team, ran for mayor of Hartlepool in England, promising free bananas for all students. Surprisingly, he won the election and was later re-elected 2 more times, in 2005 and 2009, proving that his term as mayor was more than just a joke. Strawberries have more vitamin C than oranges. Per 3.5 ounces, strawberries can provide slightly more of this vitamin than an average orange, although the difference is not always large. In addition, they contain antioxidants and fiber, making them a very complete fruit for the immune system and cardiovascular health. After Hurricane Katrina, Cuba and Venezuela were the first countries to offer their help. More than $1 million in medicine and food, as well as doctors, but they were rejected by the United States government. The moving sofa problem is a mathematical challenge that seeks to determine the largest sofa that can be moved through an L-shaped hallway. It is still considered unsolved. The largest shape found so far describes a sofa with 18 curved sections, achieving an approximate area of 2.2195, which is close but does not reach the theoretical limit. Before becoming a rapper, Ice Cube studied architectural drafting. In 2011, he appeared in a video for the Getty Museum celebrating the work of the famous architects Charles and Ray Eames, in which he toured the iconic Eames House in Los Angeles. The rapper demonstrated his passion for architecture by comparing modular construction to musical creation. The core of the sun has a temperature of 15 million degrees. In that extreme region, nuclear fusion reactions occur in which hydrogen is transformed into helium, releasing enormous amounts of energy. That energy takes thousands of years to reach the surface, and finally, about 8 minutes to travel from the sun to Earth in the form of light. The President of the United States at that time, Jimmy Carter, pressed a secret panic button in a White House bathroom, thinking it was to flush the toilet. Immediately, the Secret Service forced their way into the bathroom, and all they saw was the president putting on his underwear. In New Zealand, there is a cave that glows in the dark. This peculiar glow comes from a unique species of luminous larvae called Arachnocampa luminosa, which are bioluminescent. They generate light to attract food sources such as insects. This cave attracts thousands of visitors each year. Adhesive tape can generate X-rays if it is peeled quickly in a vacuum. This phenomenon occurs because separating the tape generates electrical charges so intense that electrons are accelerated enough to produce X-rays. On April 15, 1912, one day after the sinking of the Titanic, a waiter on a ship discovered an iceberg in the middle of the ocean. He took a photo because he noticed it appeared to be stained with red paint. Well, maybe it was not paint. The photo was black and white anyway. Once, Audi announced that it would launch a car with a built-in rice cooker in Japan, a place where rice is very popular, and almost every home has one of these cookers. Of course, it was just a joke. It is true that someone can pay to have a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame at a cost of $40,000, but they must be nominated by themselves or by someone else, and also go through a validation process to be accepted. The then Maharaja of the princely state of Alwad in India, named Jai Singh Prabhakar, visited the Rolls-Royce store in London during his first visit to the United Kingdom in 1920. There, the salesperson implied that he could not afford the luxury cars. So, in revenge, he bought 10, sent them to India, and ordered that they be used as garbage trucks. Shortly afterward, Rolls-Royce sent him an apology and 6 more cars as a gift. However, this story is not confirmed and may be only a legend. Dolphins sleep with one eye open. This happens because they rest only one half of their brain at a time, in a process called unihemispheric sleep. While one hemisphere sleeps, the other remains alert to control breathing and watch for possible threats, since they need to regularly surface to breathe air. Watermelons used to be cultivated in Africa for their water content and had almost no flavor. Their current taste was achieved after centuries of selective breeding. In 2021, a 90-year-old man spent $10,000 to place an advertisement in the Wall Street Journal addressed to the president of the company AT&T, where he complained that the internet service was too slow. Bakelite, invented by Leo Baekeland in 1907, was the first fully synthetic plastic in history. This revolutionary material became so popular that it was known as the material of 1,000 uses and was used to manufacture everything from telephones to jewelry. Its commercial success was so great that it inspired the entire industry to develop other synthetic plastics that later replaced it. John Malkovich wrote and starred in the movie 100 Years, the movie you will never be able to see. It was completed in 2015 and immediately locked and sealed in a tamper-proof box. It has no key or combination and is programmed to open automatically on November 18, 2115, though it is probably already being sold illegally in Tepito. Some captive female sharks have been able to reproduce without the help of a male, almost cloning themselves. In Japan, only beverages that contain 100% fruit juice can show a cut fruit on the label. If they contain less than 95% juice, they may show a whole fruit, and those with less than 5% cannot show any fruit on the label. Arthur John Priest was known as the unsinkable sailor because he miraculously survived 4 shipwrecks, including the famous Titanic. His extraordinary luck in escaping maritime disasters earned him the nickname of the Cat Sailor for his many lives, although eventually his fellow crew members considered him bad luck, so he decided to retire from the profession. A man named Derek Amato hit his head on the edge of a swimming pool one day. When he recovered, he had a condition called acquired savant syndrome. After that, he dedicated himself to being a pianist and did not even have to learn. The seats and curtains in theaters and cinemas are red because it is the first color to disappear in low-light conditions, making everything appear black while you watch a movie or performance. Traveling Wilburys was a supergroup made up of musicians Bob Dylan, George Harrison, Jeff Lynne, Roy Orbison, and Tom Petty, who came together to play almost casually. They recorded their first album in only 10 days, and later, when they released their second album, they titled it Volume 3 as a joke. They skipped number 2. In 1978, entrepreneur Richard Branson, who had not yet become a billionaire, learned that Necker Island in the Caribbean was for sale for $6 million. Although he could not afford it, he made an offer of $100,000 as a joke to impress a woman named Joan Templeman. To his surprise, the owner agreed to sell it for only $180,000, so he bought it. And soon after, Joan married him, and they remain together to this day. Hitler carried out the largest anti-smoking campaign that has ever existed during the 1930s and 1940s. Star jelly, also known as astral jelly, is a gelatinous substance that has been found on grass or on tree trunks. It is called that because in the past, it was believed to fall to Earth during meteor showers. Although today there is no concrete explanation for this phenomenon, the most likely theory is that it consists of gelatinous remains of frog or toad eggs that expand when they come into contact with moisture in the environment. The process that makes your brain learn new things also deteriorates it, because every time you learn something new, your cells must break their own DNA and force themselves to repair it. This phenomenon occurs mainly in neurons when certain genes related to memory and brain plasticity are activated. These are controlled and necessary breaks to strengthen synaptic connections, but over time, the repair capacity decreases, which could contribute to brain aging. Neil Young used the Game Boy camera to create the cover and artwork for his album Silver and Gold. The photos were taken by his daughter Amber. The oldest recorded wild orca was J2 Granny, a female from the southern resident population of the North Pacific. For many years, it was estimated that she had been born around 1911 and that she had surpassed 100 years of age, which would have made her one of the longest-lived orcas ever documented. The reason why at the beginning of the U2 song Vertigo, the vocalist Bono says 1, 2, 3, 14 has been analyzed by fans who have theorized things such as it referring to a passage from the Bible, the numbers of North Korean bombs, or even computer science formulas. When Bono himself was asked, he said it was just improvisation. However, years later it was discovered that it was probably a tribute to actor John Ritter, since he mentions those numbers in an episode of the series Three's Company while testing a microphone. Our eyes actually capture everything upside down. When light passes through our eyes, the image is projected onto the retina in an inverted way, meaning what is above appears below and vice versa, similar to the optical effect of a camera obscura. However, our brain is programmed to automatically process this information and flip the image. Cigarette butts are the item most commonly thrown on the street. It is estimated that more than 4 trillion are discarded each year. Each one takes between 5 and 400 years to decompose. Please stop littering. Lizards cannot walk and breathe at the same time. In many species, the lateral movement of the body while moving compresses the lungs alternately, which makes ventilation difficult while they run. It also rains in deserts, and often with considerable effects. A record of 1.7 inches of rain in just 3 hours was once recorded in the Sahara Desert. This excess water forms channels where it flows rapidly, making it dangerous for people who may be walking nearby. The oldest captive lizard in the world is named Muja and lives at the Belgrade Zoo in Serbia. He was born in 1937 and survived 2 bombings during the Second World War, when the zoo was almost completely destroyed, as well as the bombing of Yugoslavia in 1999. In 2017, Damien Chazelle, the director of the movie La La Land, became the youngest winner of the Academy Award for Best Director at 32 years of age. Some species of piranhas eat each other, in case they were not already terrifying enough. This can occur when food is scarce or when larger individuals take advantage of the vulnerability of smaller ones. The first drones, or unmanned aerial vehicles, were created in the 1930s. They were operated by radio control for the purpose of training anti-aircraft defense personnel. Over time, they became more complex, and some countries even modified old or retired airplanes to be remotely controlled. Ford Motor Company had to recall more than 2 million Ford Pinto cars in the 1970s after a design flaw was discovered that could cause the gas tank to rupture. Many accidents were reported because of this, and although a fix costing only a few dollars was found, the damage had already been done. Most of the cars of this model were recalled. All telephone services were silenced for 1 minute in the United States and Canada on August 4, 1922, to commemorate the funeral of Alexander Graham Bell, the man who invented the telephone. Director Stanley Kubrick was asked not to use room number 217 in the movie The Shining, even though that is the original number in the book, so that visitors to the hotel used for filming would not be afraid to stay there. That is why the number was changed to 237 in the film. The hotel does not even have that room number. For years, many online posts claimed that Oasis vocalist Liam Gallagher had been photographed by Google Street View inside a bar in London. However, in March 2024, Liam himself responded with a tweet stating that it was not him, since he never wears shorts with sneakers and socks. Paper airplanes have existed long before real airplanes. It is known that in China, paper was folded to make it fly at least 2,000 years ago, although they were not called paper airplanes. They were more similar to birds. Google pays Mozilla billions of dollars a year to keep Google as the default search engine in the Firefox browser, and that agreement represents Mozilla's main source of revenue. The world record for distance traveled pedaling backward on a bicycle while playing the violin at the same time is 60 kilometers in 5 hours, in case you want to break it. The largest migration of mammals in the world is that of bats. Around 100 million fruit bats, roughly the size of a domestic cat, migrate to Kasanka National Park in Zambia, where they arrive to feed on the abundant fruit available. These bats play a very important role in pollination and seed dispersal throughout the region. In 1759, Arthur Guinness, the founder of Guinness Beer, signed a lease valid for 9,000 years to operate a 16 square kilometer production plant in Dublin, Ireland. All of this for an annual rent of £45. The original contract can be seen in the brand's museum. The technology used to make smartphones depends on more than 250,000 different patents and continues to grow. These cover everything from touchscreens and lithium batteries to wireless communication protocols and data compression. Many belong to different companies and are part of cross-licensing agreements, which explains why the mobile industry is marked by constant legal disputes and strategic alliances. The United States military wanted the Golden Gate Bridge to be painted with white stripes over its characteristic red color. During its construction in the 1930s, the United States Navy suggested adding white and yellow stripes to improve the bridge's visibility in case of fog and to make it easier to identify from the air. Domino's Pizza co-founder James Monahan traded his 50% share of the company in 1961 for a used Volkswagen car. His brother kept the remaining 97%, which he later sold for billions of dollars. The NFL had one of the strictest broadcast policies in professional sports between 1973 and 2014. If a team did not sell at least 85% of the tickets 72 hours before the game, it could not be broadcast in the local city or within a radius of more than 100 kilometers. This caused, for example, President Richard Nixon to be unable to watch a Washington team game one day. A grizzly bear can run as fast as a horse. It can reach speeds close to 31 or even 34 miles per hour over short distances, thanks to its powerful muscles and large front paws. Although its size is intimidating, its agility is surprising, so trying to outrun one is usually not a safe strategy. Dogs are capable of understanding up to 250 words and gestures. They have also been shown to have the ability to perform simple mathematical operations. The sternalis muscle is so rare that fewer than 8% of humans have it. This muscle is considered an anatomical variation, since it has no clear function and is not essential for most people. It is believed to be an evolutionary vestige that, in some cases, can be confused with the pectoral muscle or part of the abdominal muscles. Some research has been published seeking to find a correlation between the presence of Walmart stores and obesity in areas of the United States. Although a study from 2011 claims this connection, other experts point out that it may be more related to the concept of food swamps, which are areas with a high concentration of fast food and unhealthy options. The famous ice hotel that is set up every year in Sweden is now required to install fire alarms, despite being made entirely of frozen water. There was a trend in the 1950s in which teenagers would squeeze into phone booths to see how many could fit. This trend, known as phone booth stuffing, began as an informal competition at universities in the United States and quickly became a popular challenge. In some cases, they managed to fit more than 20 young people into a single booth, all to break records and appear in local newspaper photographs. Composer John Williams is the living person with the most Academy Award nominations in history. He has received more than 50 nominations, surpassed only by Walt Disney, who received 59. Of those, he has won 5, the most recent in 1993 for the score of Schindler's List. Ants can combine into multiple colonies, forming supercolonies that contain multiple queens. One of the largest colonies observed contained an estimated 300 million worker ants and 1 million queens across a total of 45,000 interconnected nests. A honeybee has the same number of hairs as a squirrel, 3 million, while a human head has only 100,000. In the case of the bee, these tiny hairs are not aesthetic but functional. They help collect pollen and detect vibrations. The number in humans can vary according to genetics and age, and decreases over time. If a pregnant woman has damage to an organ, the baby in her womb sends her stem cells to help repair it. This phenomenon is known as fetal microchimerism and occurs when some fetal cells cross the placenta and integrate into maternal tissues. Fetal cells have been found in organs such as the liver, the heart, and even the brain years after pregnancy. Although its exact impact is still being studied, there is evidence that they may participate in repair and regeneration processes. In the video game Half-Life 2 Episode 2, there is an achievement that, to unlock it, you must carry a garden gnome for almost the entire journey, until the moment when there is a rocket launch and you must place it inside the spacecraft. This achievement requires so much patience that only a very small number of players in the world have managed to obtain it. Elvis Presley was heavily inspired by the superhero Captain Marvel Jr. to create his iconic, slicked-back black hairstyle and caped outfits. Even the logo of his band, TCB, features a lightning bolt in homage to this character, who is part of the comic that would later be known as Shazam. Elvis's comic book collection can still be seen at the museum in his home at Graceland. In Japan, you can buy beef tongue ice cream. This type of flavor is part of a food culture that values experimentation and limited editions. It is usually found in regions famous for their meat as part of tourism strategies and combines salty and smoky notes with a slightly sweet, creamy base. If you started with 1 penny and your money doubled daily, in 27 days you would have 1 million. This happens because the growth is exponential. Each day you not only earn what you gained the previous day, but you double the total accumulated. At first it seems insignificant, but in the last days, the increase is enormous. In fact, around day 20, you still would not have reached even half of the million, which shows how deceptive this type of progression can be. Opera singers and other vocalists with exceptionally powerful voices are able to adapt the shape of their throat to match the human ear canal. This allows them to produce a sound that fits perfectly with the way our ears perceive it. This phenomenon is known as the singer's formant and consists of amplifying certain frequencies in the voice, allowing the sound to project with great clarity and resonance, even over long distances. The turnspit dog, also known as the kitchen dog or wheel dog, was bred specifically to work in kitchens from the 16th century to the 19th century in Europe. Its main task was to run inside a wheel to turn roasting spits and cook meat evenly until technological advances, such as mechanical roasting devices, made its job obsolete. Over time, they stopped being bred and became extinct. Apollo astronauts carried out several training sessions in Iceland because it was believed at that time that the terrain would be very similar to that of the moon. The volcanic formations, lava fields, and arid geology offered an ideal setting to practice sample collection and movement across irregular surfaces. In addition to allowing scientists to study how to identify rocks of basaltic origin similar to lunar ones. There are more than 2 million saunas in Finland, enough for the entire population of the country to enter one at the same time. It is estimated that the country has around 5.5 million inhabitants, so there is practically one sauna for every 2 or 3 people. Many are in private homes, but there are also saunas in offices, public buildings, and even inside parliament. For Finns, it is not a luxury, but an essential part of their culture and weekly routine. Only 4 countries in the world have national anthems without official lyrics: Spain, Bosnia and Herzegovina, San Marino, and Kosovo. The lack of lyrics in these anthems is due to different reasons, whether to avoid conflicts between different ethnic communities or simply because none were ever proposed. Director Steven Spielberg obtained the rights to adapt Jurassic Park only a few hours before James Cameron. According to statements from Cameron, he said his version would have been much darker and compared his approach to his film Aliens, but he also said it was better the way it ultimately turned out because it respected the fascination that dinosaurs generate in children. When a cat died in ancient Egypt, all the members of the household where it lived shaved their eyebrows as a sign of mourning. Cats were considered sacred animals and were associated with the goddess Bastet, a symbol of protection and fertility. Harming one, even by accident, could be severely punished, which demonstrates the deep respect this civilization felt for them. 1/4 of all the bones in your body are in your feet. Each foot has 26 bones, which adds up to 52 out of the 206 bones in the adult human body. In addition, they include more than 30 joints and more than 100 muscles, tendons, and ligaments that work together to maintain balance, absorb impact, and allow complex movements such as walking, running, or jumping. The games Pokemon Gold and Silver were going to be the last in the franchise. That is why they included battles against the gym leaders from the original game, and at the end, against the protagonist as the conclusion of the story. But since they were a great success, they decided to continue and release Pokemon Crystal. Some original PlayStation 1 games had their music configured as CD audio, which meant you could listen to the game's music on a regular CD player. Some games even contained hidden tracks or hints that could only be accessed this way. A piece of ancient continent that was located between India and Madagascar was found in 2017 beneath the island of Mauritius, in the middle of the ocean. There is a waterfall in Hawaii that sometimes goes upward instead of downward. This occurs in places such as waterfalls on the island of Maui, where strong winds can be so intense that they push the falling water back upward, creating the illusion that the waterfall flows in the opposite direction. The refined British accent that we associate with England today emerged among the London elite around the time of the American Revolution in the 18th century. Before that, The British and the North American colonists spoke in a very similar way. Ironically, the American accent is closer to the original English than modern British English. There are sand dunes that sing in deserts all over the planet. In reality, it is a sound the sand makes when it moves in large quantities falling from the top of a dune. The energy with which it moves interacts with the air, generating sound frequencies when conditions such as humidity level and the presence of silica are met. It is a unique phenomenon. In Thailand, there are monkeys trained to pick coconuts from palm trees that can bring down up to 1,600 coconuts in one day, while a person can only bring down 80. A DNA study revealed that out of 85 different dog breeds, Chow Chows and Shiba Inus are the ones most closely related to wolves. The term bungee comes from an English dialect in which it was used to describe an elastic cord. In 1979, an extreme sports club popularized bungee jumping by leaping from the Clifton Bridge in Bristol, England. This sport has roots in the ancient land diving ritual of Vanuatu, where men jump from high platforms with vines tied to their ankles as a test of bravery. The first time prototypes of self-service kiosks were installed inside McDonald's restaurants was in 1999, where people could order their food from a screen without needing to ask a human cashier. From that moment, it was known that people tend to order more items this way. And now these ordering screens are found in practically all restaurants of this chain. In Iceland, beer was illegal until March 1st, 1989. Now that day has become a national celebration where everyone drinks beer. Drying your hands with paper towels in public restrooms can reduce bacteria on your hands by 60%. But if you use a hot air dryer, the bacteria on your hands can increase by 255%. This is because the air simply blows around the bacteria that are already living in that warm and humid place. The band Smash Mouth wrote the song All Star as a response to all the letters they received from fans who were bullied at school and by their siblings for liking the band. Later, the song became known worldwide through the soundtrack of Shrek. Jerusalem syndrome is a documented psychological phenomenon in which people who previously showed no signs of mental illness develop psychotic episodes upon arriving in Jerusalem due to its religious significance. It is one of the best-known geographic disorders, along with Paris syndrome, caused by the shock some tourists feel when visiting that city. In the city of Dresden, in Germany, there is a traffic light that got stuck on red and has been that way since 1987. It is located in an industrial area with little traffic, and although it technically works, it was never reprogrammed. Over time, it became a small local curiosity. Rabbits do not sweat. Unlike humans, they do not have functional sweat glands in their skin to regulate their temperature. Instead, they release heat mainly through their large ears, where blood vessels help dissipate it into the environment. They can also pant slightly when it is very hot, which makes them especially sensitive to high temperatures and heat stress. It has been observed that some crocodiles use waves to move faster over several miles by taking advantage of ocean currents, allowing them to discover new habitats where there may potentially be more food. So you could say that crocodiles like to surf. Jellyfish inhabit all the oceans of the world and have survived 5 mass extinctions over 700 million years, even though most of these species do not have a specialized digestive system or a nervous, respiratory, or circulatory system. Some populations in East Asia have a lower likelihood of developing alcohol dependence due to a common genetic variation in enzymes such as aldehyde dehydrogenase. This variant causes a buildup of acetaldehyde when drinking, leading to facial flushing, nausea, and discomfort, which often discourages excessive consumption. In 2013, a scientist injected human brain cells, neurons, into the brain of a mouse, which apparently improved the animal's memory skills and learning ability as well. There are ships that transport ships, such as the Yacht Servant, which is 699 feet long and was designed specifically to carry luxury yachts. This giant vessel can transport up to 36 super yachts at once. To load them, it partially submerges its hull, allowing the yachts to float directly above it before lifting them. A man purchased a personalized license plate for his car with the name Null, which means null or no value in computing terms. Although he did it as a joke, he ended up with more than $12,000 in fines because every time a police officer could not read the license plate of a car being ticketed in his city, it was entered as null in the system, and those violations were assigned directly to him. The German passport is the most powerful in the world. This means it allows access without a visa to 177 of the 218 countries that exist. For every human, there are 3 chickens. This proportion is based on global estimates that place the world's chicken population at more than 25 billion, a figure that far exceeds the human population. The main reason is the food industry. Chickens are the most consumed source of animal protein in many countries due to their low cost, rapid reproduction, and production efficiency compared to other farm animals. The story goes that ice cream cones were first used at the St. Louis World's Fair in 1904 by an ice cream vendor who ran out of cups and decided to use crispy sweets called zalabia, similar to a rolled waffle, to serve the ice cream. These were being sold at the neighboring stand. However, there are actually patent records prior to that year for making ice cream cones, so it was not the first time the idea had been conceived. Actor Jack Nicholson earned a total of $90 million for his role as the Joker in Batman from 1989. At that time, Nicholson typically charged a minimum of $10 million, but he agreed to accept only $6 million upfront, plus a percentage of the total profits of the film, including merchandise related to his character, which turned out to be a better deal for him. The stars in shows and movies on Netflix are not a rating of whether the content is good or bad. Rather, they represent how much Netflix believes you will enjoy it based on your viewing history. Some cable channels, such as TBS and TNT, play reruns of their programs slightly faster to fit in more commercials. Although this is imperceptible, slightly speeding up a half-hour program can allow for 2 extra minutes of advertising. There is a ship that can transport container cargo ships. It is called Blue Marlin. It measures 712 feet and can carry up to 75,000 tons. It once even transported an entire oil platform. Graphene is the thinnest two-dimensional material that exists and is approximately 200 times stronger than steel. It is also one of the most conductive materials known on Earth, excelling in both electrical and thermal conductivity. By two-dimensional, they mean that its thickness is only 1 atom. It is not literally two-dimensional. Only 30 of the 4,600 species of cockroaches live in habitats where humans live. The vast majority inhabit jungles, deserts, or forests and fulfill important ecological functions, such as decomposing organic matter. The few species associated with homes are highly adaptable, resilient, and reproduce quickly, which explains their disproportionate reputation compared to the rest. The most expensive wig of all time was sold at auction for $10,800. It belonged to the famous artist Andy Warhol. The demolition of the Eiffel Tower was scheduled for 1909, since it was originally intended to be a temporary structure, but it was saved after it was proposed to use it as a radio antenna that, with the necessary modifications, could transmit signals across the world. It was also used to display illuminated advertisements. Furby toys were banned in the Pentagon and other United States government offices because officials believed they could record and repeat confidential information, although they did not actually have that functionality, but they could be modified to do so. In 1994, NBA player Hakeem Olajuwon released $35 sneakers under his own brand instead of doing so with Nike or Reebok. His reason was that sneakers from those brands are too expensive and poor families cannot afford them, pushing children to do things such as stealing to buy them. Stephon Marbury did something similar in 2006, with his sneakers priced at only $15. At the moment the atomic bomb was dropped on the prefecture of Hiroshima, Japan, in 1945, a tournament of the ancient board game Go was taking place just a few kilometers away. Due to the explosion, the building was damaged and several people were injured. But even so, in the afternoon, they resumed the game and the player with the white pieces won. The Bannister effect is a phenomenon that occurs when someone achieves something that previously seemed impossible, and after that, many other people also accomplish it, being considered mainly a mental barrier. An example of this was when Tony Hawk landed the 900 trick in skateboarding. It was called the impossible trick. After this, more than 10 people have achieved it, including a 7-year-old child. Dinocheilus asubeli is an unusual lobster discovered in 2010 in the depths of the Philippine Pacific Ocean. Its name means terrible claw. Because of its asymmetrical claws, one is significantly larger than the other. Most interestingly, it has bright eyes with a special reflective layer that helps it see in the dark depths of the sea. Since the mid-2000s, Bill Gates has donated tens of billions of dollars through his foundation to support global health, vaccination, and development programs. These initiatives have significantly contributed to reducing child mortality and preventable diseases in different countries. It is estimated that approximately 10% of Europeans are immune to HIV because they share a common ancestor who survived the bubonic plague. At the Milan City Hall Christmas party in Italy in 2013, Roberto Casago, one of the council officials, opened a bottle of sparkling wine, and the cork that flew out made a hole in an 18th century painting that was there. When experts came to assess the damage, someone had tried to repair it with adhesive tape. After the script of the film The Hateful Eight was leaked, director Quentin Tarantino kept the script of his next film, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, in a safe, and only Brad Pitt, Leonardo DiCaprio, and Margot Robbie were allowed to read it in full, while Tarantino watched them the entire time. There are cheeses that are fermented using bacteria responsible for human body odor. That is why, when people say there are cheeses that smell like feet, or the other way around, they are correct. While mathematician Kurt Gödel was preparing for his United States citizenship exam, he discovered an inconsistency in the Constitution that, despite all its articles about democracy, could allow it to become a dictatorship. In less than 70 million years, Mars's moon Phobos will move so close to the surface of the red planet that it will be destroyed by the force of its motion, giving Mars a ring similar to those of other planets such as Saturn. Every day, around 100 tons of material fall to Earth directly from space, but the vast majority of this mass arrives in the form of dust-sized particles. In Germany, there is an educational initiative called Rent a Jew, in which Jewish individuals voluntarily participate in meetings and talks with schools and communities to answer questions and break down prejudice. The goal is to encourage dialogue and combat anti-Semitism through direct contact and open conversation. The least financially successful Harry Potter film, The Chamber of Secrets, earned $90 million more than the highest-grossing Twilight film. When Ocakli Ada Castle in Istanbul, Turkey, which is more than 2,000 years old, was restored, it became the subject of ridicule on social media due to its resemblance to SpongeBob or Bart Simpson. It is at least the third time it has been repaired in its history, previously by the Byzantines and by the Ottomans. Despite being one of the most densely populated places, Japan is the developed country with the highest percentage of forest territory, 74%. In 1979, a woman named Elvita Adams jumped from the 86th floor of the Empire State Building in a suicide attempt, but the wind was so strong that day that a gust blew her back into the building through a window on the 85th floor. She suffered only a fractured hip. Ozzy Osbourne donated $10,000 to a music school for underprivileged children after he saw their performance of the song Crazy Train. The voice of E.T., the extraterrestrial in the film of the same name, was done by a smoker who consumed 2 packs of cigarettes a day. The voice was not faked. There is a hotel in Japan where all the staff members are robots. The receptionist is an animatronic velociraptor. There is a fungus that is found in only 2 specific places in the world. In the state of Texas, United States, and in Japan, places that are 10,000 kilometers apart. There is an underground pipeline system in the United Kingdom that connects different cities. It was built during the Second World War to safely transport aviation fuel throughout the country, avoiding the risks of moving it by road and rail. It is still used today, mainly to supply commercial aviation. Statistically, it is very unlikely that a massive impact would cause fragments of Mars to reach Earth. Of the more than 50,000 cataloged meteorites, only a small number, fewer than 500, have been confirmed as originating from Mars. Some of these meteorites contain evidence that the red planet once had water on its surface. In Russia, there is a temple of all religions that serves as a peaceful combination of different cultures. There should be places like that everywhere. When Genghis Khan died in 1227, he ordered that the location where he was buried never be revealed, and that everyone who saw the route to his tomb be killed. To this day, the site of his burial remains unknown. People who tend to buy chrome accessories for their cars are more likely to not pay their debts on time. This connection was found by some bored individuals studying credit card purchasing statistics. Sean William Scott, the actor who played Stifler in the American Pie films, was extremely shy and became very nervous around women. He did not have a girlfriend until he was 30. Usain Bolt is capable of reaching a speed of 27 miles per hour. He is almost as fast as a cat. In Canada, it is illegal to carry a product designed for personal protection, including pepper spray. It is estimated that the spacecraft Voyager 1 has already left the solar system, becoming the first human-made object to reach so far. Leonardo DiCaprio has that name because when his pregnant mother was standing in front of a painting by Leonardo da Vinci, she felt the future actor's first kick. During the Middle Ages, due to superstitions, many cities got rid of black cats, which caused the rat population to increase. It is believed that this was one of the factors that allowed the plague to spread more quickly and across more regions. Leonardo da Vinci invented scissors, but he did not win an Oscar. Erwin Schrödinger never believed that a cat could be alive and dead at the same time. He created his experiment only as satire, criticizing the Copenhagen interpretation of quantum mechanics. There is a fortress castle called Mont Saint-Michel, located on the coast of Normandy, France. It is accessible on foot when the tide is low, but becomes an island when the tide rises. It was the only place in Normandy that did not fall into English hands during the Hundred Years' War. The Panama Canal was initially going to be built in Nicaragua, but the plans were abandoned because the route passed near active volcanoes, and there was a shorter route in Panama. There have been new discussions about building a canal where it was originally planned, but they have not been carried out. The Tunit, also known as the Dorset culture, were the original inhabitants of the Canadian Arctic before the Inuit. According to Inuit legends, they were extraordinarily strong and could cut blocks of solid ice using only their teeth. Although they were shy and avoided contact with strangers, they mysteriously disappeared about 700 years ago. Ostriches can run faster than horses, and the males can roar almost like lions. Homemade artisanal liquor accounts for nearly 30% of all alcohol consumed worldwide. The movie Moonlight was made with only $1.5 million. There has not been an Academy Award-winning movie with a lower budget since Rocky. Several movie theaters in Denmark put Danish subtitles on Danish films. They do this because it can be difficult to understand the different dialects. A lion kills fewer than 20 animals each year on average for food or protection. Although they are iconic predators, they do not hunt every day and usually rest much of the time to conserve energy. In addition, females carry out most group hunts, which increases efficiency and reduces the number of failed attempts. In India, there is a proposal to link 67 rivers to prevent flooding. To make this possible, an area equivalent to the surface of Germany would need to be irrigated. In the scene where squirrels sort nuts in the movie Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, real squirrels were actually trained to do it, and it took months. They were even trained to attack the stunt double of the character Veruca Salt. The only country where 100% of the population has access to the internet is Iceland. The British Empire once had a territory larger than the entire African continent. Descending from Mount Everest after reaching the summit takes approximately 3 days and can be even more dangerous than the ascent. Some people have descended by paraglider or wingsuit, but that is no longer allowed unless they obtain a special permit. Laughter has a positive effect on the immune system. When we laugh, antibody production increases and immune system cells are activated, which helps strengthen the body's natural defenses against infections. Therefore, laughing regularly can be considered a natural boost for our system. John F. Kennedy was the first president of the United States who had been a scout in his youth. A donkey's eyes are conveniently positioned so that it can see all 4 of its legs at the same time. The act of yawning and stretching at the same time is called pandiculation. This involuntary movement combines a generalized muscle contraction followed by relaxation, which helps reactivate circulation and adjust posture after periods of rest. The Ferris wheel, juicy fruit gum, and Aunt Jemima pancake mix were introduced to the world at the Chicago World's Fair in 1893. Raditor, an energy drink sold in the 1920s, claimed to provide energy and cure ailments such as impotence. It was discovered that it was simply radium dissolved in water. Many people who drank it died slowly. To this day, the Titanic is the only transatlantic ship that has sunk because of an iceberg. When she first arrived in Los Angeles at 19 years old, the South African Charlize Theron survived on the checks her mother sent her to pay the rent. One day, a bank teller refused to cash a check for her, which enraged her, and she began yelling. This real-life scene caught the attention of a talent agent who was standing right behind her, and who shortly afterward introduced her to acting. Titanic lifeboat number 1, which had the capacity to carry more than 40 people, was lowered into the sea with only 12 occupants, mainly first-class passengers, while the ship was sinking, and later they refused to return to look for survivors. This was one of the 20 lifeboats the ship had, which, even if filled, would not have been enough to save everyone on board. During the filming of the movie Resident Evil Retribution, a platform collapsed, injuring 16 people, most of them extras. When emergency services arrived, they had difficulty distinguishing between those who were seriously injured and those who only had zombie makeup. According to a study, Inuit, Native Americans, and Siberians have a gene related to tolerance to low temperatures. According to statistics, the more expensive a wedding is, the more likely the couple is to get divorced. In the Amazon rainforest, there are between 20 and 40 million different animal species, most of them insects, and more than 40,000 different plant species. There are more possible combinations of chess games than atoms in the entire universe. Levi's 501 jeans require 37 different sewing operations during their manufacturing process. The reason why Leonardo da Vinci's painting The Mona Lisa became world famous was that a critic wrote a book describing its appearance 350 years after it was painted, sparking people's curiosity at a time when cameras did not exist. They are called zombie fires, or persistent fires, when they remain buried and active throughout the winter, even when they were thought to be extinguished, feeding on organic matter in the soil, and then reactivate in the spring and emerge to the surface. In Finland, mothers who are about to have a baby are given a baby box as part of a social program. This package contains essential items for a newborn, such as clothing, diapers, and hygiene products, and the box itself can serve as a crib. These packages have been distributed since 1938. The characteristic smell of freshly cut grass is actually a distress signal from the plant after it has been damaged. A lightning bolt contains enough energy to power an average home for 2 weeks. Australian actress Nicole Kidman was actually born in Hawaii, while her parents were temporarily in the United States on educational visas. They named her Hokulani, which means Star of Heaven in Hawaiian. English archers in the medieval period could shoot at distances of more than 300 meters. It required so much strength that today their skeletons can be identified because they have elongated left arms. To promote the film Contagion, Warner Bros. Canada created 2 giant petri dishes treated with bacteria and fungi and placed them in a storefront display. After a few days, the bacteria and fungi grew, revealing the movie's logo. It was the first bacteria billboard in history. According to an ancient Chinese custom, eating chicken at a person's funeral helps their soul fly to paradise. The 1960s television series Lost in Space was set in the year 1997. The NASA Vehicle Assembly Building is so large that around 10,000 tons of air conditioning equipment are needed to prevent rain clouds from forming inside on days with high humidity. Until before 1800, dentures were made from the teeth of dead soldiers. In Europe, it was common to extract dental pieces from battlefields, especially after wars in the 18th century, to reuse them in prosthetics. These Waterloo teeth were valued for their relatively healthy condition. Over time, they were replaced by porcelain and other more hygienic and durable materials. In Moscow, there are dogs that have learned to take the subway from the suburbs to the city to look for food, and then return home in the afternoon. A comedian founded the Polish Beer Lovers Party in 1990 as a satire in response to the political changes happening in the country at that time. Surprisingly, in the 1991 elections, they received more than 360,000 votes, which earned them 16 of the 460 seats in the Polish parliament. The largest library in the world is the Library of Congress of the United States. It contains nearly 37 million cataloged books out of 178 million items and all kinds of multimedia material in more than 470 languages, including sound recordings, films, and digital material. It was established in 1800. Raccoons are smarter than dogs and cats. They have approximately the same mental capacity as monkeys. Various experiments have shown that they can solve complex locks, remember solutions for months, and manipulate objects with great dexterity thanks to the sensitivity of their front paws. Napoleon Bonaparte and Adolf Hitler were born 127 years apart, rose to power 127 years apart, and invaded Russia 127 years apart as well. It is believed that humans see the colors we see because they are the part of the light spectrum that can pass through water, which is where eyes first evolved. In our evolutionary path, there was no reason or need to expand this spectrum, something that did occur in many other species. On a small island in the Pacific Ocean called Pingalap, 10% of the population has complete achromatopsia. That means they cannot see colors, only black, white, and shades of gray. This condition limits vision during the day, but it can benefit vision at night, which makes activities such as nighttime fishing easier. Pandas do not have a specific place where they prefer to sleep. They generally fall asleep wherever they feel tired. In the wild, they often lean against tree trunks, rocks, or simply lie on the ground, since they spend much of the day eating bamboo and conserving energy. Unlike other bears, they do not hibernate, so they spread their rest periods across several naps throughout the day. A bookstore in Sacramento, United States, started a library of things. People can go there to rent items such as musical instruments, sewing machines, and other useful objects. The longest living tortoise in the world is named Jonathan. He was born in 1832 in Seychelles and holds the record as the oldest living land animal. He lives on the island of St. Helena, where the 5-cent coin features his image on the reverse side. The Coleco Atom computer from 1983 had several issues, including emitting electromagnetic pulses when it was turned on, so if a tape was inside when powering up, it could be accidentally erased. This was detailed in the instruction manual. Webcams were invented because some computer engineers were too lazy and did not want to get up to see if the coffee was ready. The original program of The Price is Right used to give people an elephant as a joke prize. Later, they would give them $4,000. But one day, a winner complained because he truly wanted his elephant. After several threats, the show finally gave in and delivered an elephant to the winner's home. Yes, that is where that episode of The Simpsons came from, where Bart wanted his elephant. The Cave of the Crystals, in the state of Chihuahua in Mexico, has the largest crystals in the world, which can measure up to 36 feet and weigh approximately 60 short tons. It was discovered in 2000. The extreme conditions inside the cave, with temperatures up to 136 degrees and more than 90% humidity, make it practically uninhabitable for humans without special equipment. The name of the singer Björk means birch in Icelandic, which is a tree that appears frequently in Celtic and Slavic mythology. In addition, the correct way to pronounce it, according to her in an interview, is Björk. There was a cat named Unsinkable Sam, who survived 4 ship sinkings during the Second World War. This cat truly did not like water. In New York, it is illegal to sell a haunted house without first informing the buyer. This idea comes from a famous case from 1991, known as Stambovsky versus Ackley, in which a judge determined that if the seller had publicly promoted the home as haunted, they could not later deny that reputation when closing the sale. Cows have an extremely wide field of vision that allows them to see nearly 360 degrees around them. This is due to the placement of their eyes, which are located on the sides of their heads. Although they cannot see directly behind themselves, their peripheral vision is so strong that they can detect movement in almost their entire surroundings without moving their heads. The eruption of Mount St. Helens in 1980 had a lateral explosion, something very unusual in volcanoes. This explosion occurred because the north side of the mountain weakened due to magma buildup, forming a massive dome that suddenly collapsed. The landslide it triggered is the largest recorded in history. It destroyed more than 600 square kilometers of forest in minutes. Scientific studies have concluded that babies sometimes cry at night to prevent their parents from having another baby. This hypothesis comes from evolutionary theories suggesting that frequent nighttime crying can influence sleep patterns and postpartum fertility, lengthening the interval between pregnancies. The concept of rap battles has existed since the 5th century, when poets insulted each other in verse. In ancient Greece, there were competitions of improvised poetry and public satire in which participants exchanged rhymed insults and criticisms in front of an audience. Similar traditions also appeared in Nordic and Celtic cultures, with formal verbal duels. Although modern rap was born in the 20th century within hip-hop culture, the idea of lyrical confrontations has much older roots. Our solar system has a wall, the heliopause. It is the region of space where the solar wind is no longer hot enough to repel the particle wind coming from distant stars. It is considered the boundary between the solar system and interstellar space. This frontier is located about 120 astronomical units from the Sun. Anatoly Bugorsky is known as the man who survived putting his head inside a particle accelerator in 1978 while checking defective equipment. He was struck by a proton beam with radiation 1,000 times greater than the lethal dose. Surprisingly, according to his description, he only saw a flash brighter than 1,000 suns and survived with only some after effects that do not completely affect his daily life. There are studies that have been conducted suggesting that access to the internet makes your brain lazy. Some research suggests that delegating information to search engines can reduce long-term memory, a phenomenon known as the Google effect. However, other experts argue that the internet also stimulates skills such as critical thinking, multitasking, and the ability to filter large volumes of information. Women in India own 11% of all the gold in the world in jewelry. That is more than the reserves of the United States and Switzerland combined. This enormous amount is linked to cultural and religious traditions in which gold symbolizes prosperity and financial security. In many families, it is passed down from generation to generation and also functions as a form of savings. During weddings and festivals, the purchase of gold increases considerably, reinforcing its economic and social role. George Koval was a Soviet spy who infiltrated the Manhattan Project. He gained access to secret laboratories and stole key information about nuclear weapons. His work allowed the Soviet Union to develop its atomic bomb much earlier than expected. Incredibly, his identity as a spy was not discovered until 2002, decades after he had changed the global nuclear balance. In Finland, all betting and gambling services are controlled by the government, and all profits are reported and donated to charity. In Switzerland, it is legal to eat dog and cat meat, and some people still do it. Swiss law does not explicitly prohibit the private consumption of these animals, as long as there is no trade or abuse, although in practice it is very uncommon and socially rejected. Local organizations have tried to push for stricter bans in recent years. Some copies of the movie Gremlins 2 on VHS contained a scene in which the gremlins interfered with the television signal. It was later removed from new copies because people thought it was real and that it was happening to them. Billiards played a key role in the invention of plastic, since the ivory used to manufacture billiard balls became too expensive in the late 19th century. Faced with high demand for billiard balls and the rising cost of ivory, a more affordable alternative was sought, leading to the development of plastic materials such as bakelite. The village of Giethoorn in the Netherlands is known as the Venice of the North because it has no roads. Its residents and visitors travel on foot or by boat along its canals. This destination is famous for its wooden bridges, thatched roof houses, and peaceful atmosphere that attracts tourists from all over the world. There is an optical illusion called the McCullough effect that is so powerful that just 10 minutes of looking at it can distort how you see colors for up to a month. Once, Mike Tyson offered a zoo caretaker $10,000 if he would let him go in to fight a gorilla. The offer was rejected. The first street to be illuminated with incandescent lamps was Mosley Street in Newcastle, United Kingdom, in 1879. Thanks to the invention of Joseph Swan, this technological advancement quickly spread to other cities. In 1880, London and Paris also began installing similar streetlights. The Permian-Triassic extinction was the most severe extinction event in the history of the planet, eliminating more than 90% of all species. It was caused by different events of massive volcanic eruptions, which increased carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere and led to ocean acidification. Since koalas are very solitary, there is no word to refer to a group of koalas. Unlike other animals that live in herds or colonies, koalas maintain individual territories and only interact mainly during breeding season. Although they are sometimes seen in the same tree, they do not form stable social structures like other mammals. Snow should not be eaten, since it attracts air pollutants and can be harmful to health. When it forms and falls, it can capture suspended particles, heavy metals, and combustion residues present in the atmosphere. In addition, when it touches the ground, it collects dirt, bacteria, and microplastics. Even snow that looks clean can contain invisible impurities, so it is not as harmless as it is often thought to be. Due to a lack of audience interest, the 2025 movie Snow White is expected to have a final loss of approximately $115 million. Even adding digital sales and streaming rights, its production cost plus promotion totaled $410 million, making it one of the most expensive films. In the 1960s, Henry Ford II tried to buy Ferrari. But the offer was rejected by Enzo Ferrari, who almost took it as a joke. This angered Ford so much that, as revenge, he developed the legendary Ford GT40 with the sole purpose of defeating Ferrari at Le Mans, which he achieved consecutively between 1966 and 1969. In Germany, the at symbol is informally called the spider monkey symbol or Klammeraffe. The nickname arose because the shape of the sign resembles a small monkey hanging with its tail curled. It is not the only curious name in Europe. In other countries, it is associated with snails, ducks, or even small cinnamon rolls. No human-made object has survived on the surface of the planet Venus for more than 127 minutes. The Soviet probes of the Venera program lasted the longest, but temperatures above 860 degrees Fahrenheit and crushing atmospheric pressure, equivalent to being almost 0.6 miles under the ocean, quickly destroy any electronic equipment or metal structure. The Sun loses around 4 million tons of mass every second due to nuclear fusion. In this process, it converts hydrogen into helium and releases energy as light and heat. It does not recover that mass. It simply transforms it into energy, and at some point, it will run out. A study from Stanford University discovered that walking increases creative inspiration. Participants were subjected to tests designed to measure their creativity, such as coming up with alternative uses for everyday objects. The results showed that, on average, walking increased creative output by 60%, regardless of whether it was done outdoors or on a treadmill. Within the philosophy of time, so-called presentism is the belief that only the present exists, while the future and the past are false. According to this position, only events that are happening now possess full reality, and memories or expectations do not exist outside the mind. This idea is often contrasted with eternalism, which holds that past, present, and future coexist in some way. Rats have a collapsible skeleton, which means they can fit into a hole the size of a coin. In reality, their bones do not flatten as if they were made of rubber, but their collarbone is very small and flexible, and their rib cage can compress slightly. If the head can pass through an opening, the rest of the body can almost always do so as well, which explains how they infiltrate surprisingly narrow cracks. Only 2 fantasy films have won the Academy Award for Best Picture: The Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King, and The Shape of Water. It is a film genre that has traditionally been ignored by the Academy over the years, despite having great films. The government of the United States gave Indiana University $1 million to conduct a study on memes. The project sought to analyze how information spreads on social media, especially during elections and important events, in order to detect coordinated disinformation campaigns. The researchers studied viral patterns, bots, and the way certain images or phrases influence public opinion. Before becoming butterflies, caterpillars become completely liquid inside the cocoon. During metamorphosis, their tissues almost completely break down and form a kind of cellular soup. However, not everything disappears. Small groups of cells called imaginal discs survive and use that material to reorganize and build wings, antennae, eyes, and all the structures of the adult insect. In the series The Office, the companies Office Max and Staples are presented as direct rivals of the fictional company Dunder Mifflin, which specializes in selling paper and office supplies. Interestingly, just like Dunder Mifflin, both companies faced difficulties staying afloat in real life. Staples was acquired in 2017 by the firm Sycamore Partners, and Office Max was purchased by Office Depot in 2013. During the period of the Cultural Revolution in China, from 1966 to 1976, Western classical music was banned. This included works by artists such as Beethoven, Mozart, and Chopin, as they were considered a symbol of Western decadence and were prohibited along with other similar artistic expressions. A combination of a lot of stress and a lot of coffee can even cause hallucinations. Caffeine stimulates the central nervous system and, in very high doses, can alter perception, especially if it is combined with lack of sleep and intense anxiety. In extreme cases, paranoid thoughts, temporary confusion, and a sense of unreality that disappears when consumption is reduced and proper rest is taken may occur. A glass ball can bounce higher than a plastic ball. This is because glass, when solid and well-made, can be more elastic in physical terms and lose less energy when hitting a hard surface. The ability to bounce depends on the material's coefficient of restitution. If it is high, the ball returns a greater portion of the energy from the impact and reaches a greater height, as long as it does not shatter in the attempt. Actor Jim Carrey wrote himself a check for $10 million in 1990, dated for cashing 5 years later as a way of manifesting his goals. This was when he was beginning to become known in Hollywood. 5 years later, his salary for the movie Dumb and Dumber was $10 million. According to a survey, the Christmas gifts people hate the most are flowers and plants, with 42% of respondents saying they would prefer to return them, followed by beauty products, liquor, pet products, and books. Tenochtitlan, the capital of the Aztec Empire, became the largest city in the Americas with 200,000 inhabitants. It was built in the middle of a lake, had giant pyramids, floating gardens, aqueducts, and canals. It was almost entirely destroyed in 1521. To go all the way around the world at the equator, it would take 33 million people holding hands. This is calculated based on the Earth's circumference at the equator being approximately 24,854 miles, and that each person, with arms outstretched, takes up, on average, a little more than 3 feet of space. In practice, more would be needed, since not everyone would measure the same or be able to stand perfectly aligned. In 2007, Princess Peach from the popular Mario Brothers games appeared on the Forbes Fictional 15 list. At 23 years old, she already had a fortune of $1,300,000,000, obtained through inheritances and a divorce. Mamma mia! Pangolin scales are made of keratin, the same material our fingernails are made of, which serves as armor. This covering is so strong that it can be bitten by an animal as large and powerful as a lion without causing it harm. The famous horror and suspense novelist Stephen King did not tell his children bedtime stories. On the contrary, he forced them to tell stories to him. Among the strange purchases actor Nicolas Cage has made at some point are a private island in the Bahamas, a haunted mansion in New Orleans, Superman #1 comic book, a crocodile and a shark, a collection of pygmy shrunken heads, a dinosaur fossil, and a pyramid-shaped tomb. Thioacetone is the chemical compound with the worst smell in the world. So potent that in 1889, German scientists synthesized it in the city of Freiburg. The odor was so unbearable that it caused the evacuation of part of the city and led to nausea and even fainting among people near the laboratory. It is so powerful that even microscopic amounts can be detected miles away. The Itaipu Dam, which is located in Paraguay and Brazil, is the hydroelectric plant that produces the most energy in the world. The famous moonwalk move has existed for at least 50 years before Michael Jackson performed it for the first time. It had already been done by James Brown, David Bowie, Dick Van Dyke, and Cab Calloway, among others. Romantic chess was a predominant style of play before the 20th century, in which players prioritized creativity and artistic expression over deep strategy or long-term planning. In this approach, risky attacks and spectacular tactical combinations were valued, resulting in exciting and surprise-filled games. This style was gradually replaced by a more technical and calculating approach. Piranhas only attack humans when they feel threatened or when their eggs are at risk. Primitive horseshoe crabs have blue blood. Their blood is used for drug testing and can cost up to $15,000 per quart. Freddie Mercury and Paul McCartney used the same piano to record Bohemian Rhapsody and Hey Jude. A parakeet named Nigel escaped one day from his owner's house in England in 2010. It was thought that he had died, but 4 years later he returned. No one knows exactly where he went, but he came back speaking only Spanish. Finland has ranked consecutively from 2018 through 2025 in first place in the World Happiness Report ranking of the happiest countries in the world. This report measures the well-being of countries based on factors such as quality of life, stability, social support, income, freedom, and trust. Many thermostats installed in offices are not actually connected and do not affect the temperature. Instead, they send a signal to a central computer where a person adjusts the temperature according to measurements in each zone, or they are not connected to anything at all and simply serve as a placebo button to keep employees satisfied. If you have a grandfather or grandmother who was born in Ireland, you can apply for Irish citizenship. You do not even have to know anything about the country or have ever visited it. And since it is currently part of the European Union, the passport allows you to live and work wherever you want in Europe. The Klein bottle is a shape that has no inside or outside, since it has only one surface and one edge, and it can only exist in 4-dimensional space. In the series Futurama, there is a beer called Klein that is sold inside bottles with this shape. The tree where Isaac Newton was resting when an apple fell on him, inspiring his theory of gravity, still exists. It is located at the house where he lived in his childhood in England. It is more than 450 years old, has survived storms and other events, and still bears fruit to this day. The only countries where people are not allowed to divorce are the Philippines and the Vatican. Japan imports rice from the United States to comply with global trade agreements, but people do not eat that rice. It is given to North Korea or used to feed livestock. In the city of Anchorage, Alaska, every year they build a giant snowman up to 5 meters tall called Snowzilla, a play on words between snow and Godzilla. It has been a tradition since 2005, although there have been different attempts to ban it because it is located in a residential area. In some regions of Russia, explosives have been used in a controlled manner during the winter to break up large blocks of ice in rivers and prevent jams that could cause flooding. These blockages, known as ice dams, form when thawing pushes slabs that accumulate and raise the water level. Today, icebreakers and satellite monitoring are also used to reduce risks in vulnerable areas. In 2010, Taylor Swift proposed a vote to go somewhere to sing for free. Users of 4chan, trolls par excellence, coordinated to vote for a school for deaf children and won the vote. For years, Steven Spielberg told the story about how he managed to enter the film industry. He said he snuck into Universal Studios wearing a suit, sat in an empty office, and pretended someone had hired him. However, this was not true. He did sneak into the studios once out of curiosity, but later it was his successful father who arranged the visit so he could get that job. Ancient representations of the beast in Beauty and the Beast varied depending on the adaptation. In the initial versions of the tale, such as those by Villeneuve and Beaumont, the beast had an animal appearance, mixing features of a lion or a wild boar. Later, 19th century illustrations depicted him as a monstrous figure, but with noble and human traits. In 2005, a glitch in the game World of Warcraft allowed a plague to spread, forcing players who were not infected to abandon the cities where the infected were being kept in quarantine. This phenomenon later served as a study for epidemiologists to see how people in real life react to a pandemic. In a scene from the movie Blade Trinity, the actor who played Blade, Wesley Snipes, refused to open his eyes when he had to wake up because he had problems with the director, so they had to add digital animated eyes, which are very obvious. Once, the restaurant Domino's Pizza collaborated with movie studios to create pizza DVDs that had a scent activated by heat. So, after watching a movie and spinning the disc for a while, it would warm up and smell like pizza. They were distributed only in limited quantities in certain countries. Saddam Hussein's son had a real Iron Maiden, the famous torture instrument. He used it on people he did not like. The characteristic stripes that tigers have are not only on their fur, they are also on their skin. The pattern is determined by the distribution of melanin during the animal's development, so even if the fur is shaved, the markings remain visible in the dermis. In addition, each tiger has a unique design, like a fingerprint, which allows them to be identified individually in conservation and wildlife tracking studies. The longest scientific name of an animal in Spanish is Parastratiosphecomia stratiosphecomioides, a species of fly discovered in Thailand. This name consists of 42 letters, comes from ancient Greek, and means resembling a soldier fly wasp. There are animals that practically do not sleep, such as the bullfrog, which is always alert even when resting. Also, some species of sharks that must keep swimming constantly in order to breathe, and giraffes and ants sleep only for very short periods of time. In Queensland, Australia, it is illegal to have a pet rabbit unless you can prove that you are a magician. The rule exists because rabbits were introduced in the 19th century and became a devastating plague that affected crops and ecosystems. Only very strict exceptions are allowed, since the country strongly protects its native biodiversity. Only one person out of every 2 billion will reach 116 years of age. Studies on extreme longevity show that after 110 years, the annual survival probabilities decrease drastically, and only a few supercentenarians worldwide reach such advanced ages. Genetic factors, lifestyle, and chance play a role, but even in populations with high life expectancy, surpassing that barrier remains extraordinarily rare. A hidden Easter egg in the Sega Saturn game Astal was discovered 26 years after its release. It is an image file of Mario with a rather strange expression, hidden among the game's data. This title was released when the rivalry between Sega and Nintendo was at its peak in the 1990s. Actress Jane Kaczmarek, who plays Lois, Malcolm's mother in the series Malcolm in the Middle, was nominated 7 consecutive times in the category of Best Actress at the Emmy Awards during the show's 7 seasons. However, she did not win any of them. The president of Iceland says that he would like to ban pineapple as a pizza topping if he were allowed to enact laws on his own. Because of that kind of thing, he is not allowed to. When the iconic Plaza Hotel in New York opened in 1907, a night cost $2.50, equivalent to about $64 today. Currently, a room costs more than $1,000 per night. The jump reflects not only inflation, but also how the luxury and exclusivity of this hotel increased significantly over time. False coral snakes developed imitation as a survival strategy. They have the same colors and even the same patterns as true coral snakes, although they are not venomous. This mimicry technique helps them scare away predators. Since true coral snakes are so venomous, it is recommended not to approach any snake that looks like a coral snake. In 1900, 38% of the few automobiles that existed were electric. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, electric vehicles were popular because they did not produce smoke, were quieter, and did not require a hand crank to start. However, the mass production of gasoline cars and improved access to fuel ended up displacing them for decades. The largest bowling alley in the world is in Japan, in the city of Inazawa. It has 116 lanes across 650 feet, where up to 696 people can play at the same time. Contrary to how it is seen in the movies, if you bother a Queen's Guard at Buckingham Palace, it is not their obligation to remain motionless. They will most likely shout at you and point their rifle at you, or hit you, or kill you. A doctor once tried to prove that the soul had weight. He placed people who were dying on giant scales and observed whether there was any difference at the moment of death. When a whale dies and sinks to the deepest parts of the ocean, it can sustain an ecosystem of organisms for decades. This phenomenon is known as a whale fall and occurs when the body reaches the seafloor, where it is first consumed by scavengers such as sharks and deep-sea fish. Later, specialized bacteria break down the lipids in the bones and release compounds that feed entire communities of worms, crustaceans, and mollusks adapted to extreme darkness. The president of Finland, who ended his term in 2024, Sauli Niinisto, was in Thailand with his son during the 24 tsunami, where they survived by climbing onto a utility pole. Around 10% of ancient tools that have been found were designed to be used by left-handed people. This confirms that over at least the last 10,000 years, the proportion of left-handed individuals has remained constant. It has not changed. When they filmed the death scene of the villain Hans Gruber in Die Hard, they dropped Alan Rickman 1 second earlier than planned. Since he did not expect it, the look of surprise that appears in the final cut is real. If a pair of twins have children with another pair of twins, the children would be genetically siblings. This can occur when both sets are identical twins, since they share practically the same DNA. If one pair of identical brothers has children with a pair of identical sisters, the cousins would share as much genetic material as 2 biological siblings. Legally, they would be cousins, but from a genetic point of view, their relationship would be equivalent to that of full siblings. During the famous scene in which Gene Kelly dances in the rain in the movie Singin' in the Rain, the actor had a fever of more than 102 degrees. Although the director advised him to go home, Kelly insisted on filming. Water machines were used to create the rain effect on set. The BT Tower telecommunications tower in London was officially considered a state secret for many years. It did not appear on official maps, and its existence was not acknowledged until 1993. Despite all of this, it was open to the public and even had a revolving restaurant at the top. In Turkey, there is a city called Batman. It is located in the southeast of the country, and its name comes from the Batman River, not from the comic book character. It is an area with strong oil activity since the mid-20th century, which boosted its growth and economic development in the region. According to NASA, Antarctica is the only continent where there are no spiders. The extreme conditions of cold, dryness, and wind make the survival of terrestrial insects and arachnids almost impossible. The continent's native fauna is mainly limited to microorganisms, some nematodes, microscopic mites, and small invertebrates adapted to the ice. Although in coastal areas, marine species related to spiders can be found, on land there are no spiders living naturally. Although it was discovered in 1974, the mausoleum of the first emperor of China, Qin Shi Huang, remains unopened. It is believed that inside there is a vast underground palace with rivers of mercury and deadly traps. Archaeologists have chosen not to disturb it out of respect and due to a lack of adequate technology. This site is famous for having the terracotta warriors outside, symbolically protecting the emperor. In 1998, Burger King announced that it would launch a hamburger for left-handed people that had all the ingredients rotated 180 degrees. It was all an April Fool's Day joke, but people believed it, and the next day, many people went to order it. The quietest place in the world is the anechoic chamber at Microsoft's offices in Washington. The background noise in this room is so low that it approaches the mathematically defined threshold of absolute zero sound, just before reaching a vacuum, which is the complete absence of sound. The thorny lizard Moloch horridus has a false head on top of its real head that it displays when attacked as a decoy for predators. It can also change color to camouflage itself. It inhabits Central Australia. During the Second World War, a British sailor escaped from his submarine that was at 269 feet deep, swam to the surface, and survived to tell the story. There was a competition in which professional investors, teenagers, and a cat tried to achieve the greatest profit in the stock market. The investors obtained 3.5 of profit, the teenagers lost 3.5, and the cat won by having an increase of 10.8%. It chose the stocks by tossing its plastic toy mouse. The founders of Google were willing to sell the company to Excite for $1 million in 1999, but the offer was rejected. Google is now worth around $527 billion. The plastic or metal tip at the end of shoelaces is called an aglet. This term comes from the Latin ferrum, meaning iron, and a suffix indicating a diminutive form. Aglets make it easier to thread laces through eyelets and prevent them from fraying. The two Egyptian mummies at Tulane University in New Orleans attended 3 Super Bowl games. This is because the storage room where they were kept was located directly beneath the stadium at that university where the Super Bowls of 1970, 1972, and 1975 were held. To this day, technically, no other Egyptian mummy has attended a football game, much less another Super Bowl. The first word of the commander of Apollo 11, Pete Conrad, upon arriving on the moon was whoopee, if that can even be called a word. He did it to win a bet he made with an Italian journalist who claimed that NASA controlled everything the astronauts said with scripts. Snoozing your alarm to wake up, instead of helping you wake up slowly, actually makes it harder because the sleep cycle has to restart each time. The 17th century French philosopher René Descartes, famous for the phrase, "I think, therefore I am," believes that animals were not conscious beings nor capable of suffering. He considered them machines without souls. This led him to conduct cruel experiments, which even at that time caused significant controversy and harsh criticism. The term third world country actually has nothing to do with poverty. It refers to countries that, during the Second World War, did not join the coalition of the United States or the Soviet bloc. Cats sleep up to 18 hours a day, but they do not do so as deeply as humans. They wake up from time to check whether their territory is still peaceful. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs won a special Academy Award, a full-size Oscar, along with 7 miniature Oscars in reference to the Seven Dwarfs. The density of the planet Saturn is so low that if you placed it on water, it would float. Its average density is lower than that of water because it is composed mainly of hydrogen and helium, the lightest elements. In theory, if there were an ocean large enough, it could stay afloat. Crows, in addition to being very intelligent birds, also have exceptional memory and can recognize human faces for years, allowing them to distinguish between friendly people and those who pose a threat. They can even pass this information on to the next generations of crows. Cats sleep so much that a 9-year-old cat has only been awake for 3 years. On average, they can sleep between 12 and 16 hours a day, and even more if they are kittens or senior adults. This pattern is due to the fact that they are crepuscular predators, active mainly at dawn and dusk, and they conserve energy for moments of hunting or play. One day, Elvis Presley tipped his driver by giving him the limousine he was driving because the driver told him he worked for the company and that the vehicle was not his. The word corgi comes from Welsh and literally translates as dwarf dog. It is made up of two parts, kor, meaning dwarf, and gi, meaning dog. Despite their size, corgis are known for their energy and bravery. The planet Earth is the only one that does not take its name from a god. Unlike Mars, Venus, Jupiter, or Saturn, whose names come from Roman mythology, the word Earth derives from Germanic and Anglo-Saxon terms that simply meant soil or ground. The Books of Magic is a comic book miniseries written by Neil Gaiman in 1990 that introduces Timothy Hunter, a young boy with the potential to become the most powerful magician in the world. The series presents obvious parallels with Harry Potter, such as both protagonists being English teenagers with glasses and a pet owl. Both franchises belong to Warner, which is why there are no conflicts. Antony van Leeuwenhoek, known as the father of microbiology, was the first to observe microscopic organisms, which he called animalcules. His research laid the foundations of modern microbiology, and, despite his lack of formal academic credentials, he was elected a member of the Royal Society in 1680. Quentin Tarantino contacted Kurt Cobain to ask if he wanted to play the heroin dealer in the movie Pulp Fiction, but the offer was rejected. In the United States, the number of vacant homes is 6 times greater than the number of homeless people. There are 18.5 million empty houses and 3.5 million homeless individuals. More than 50% of people in the world have never made or received a phone call. Switzerland stands out for its high recycling rates, reaching between 66 and 96% recovery of recyclable materials. This achievement is due to policies such as the mandatory use of official garbage bags for waste collection, encouraging this practice. The sensation of a lump in the throat that can be felt when you are nervous or emotionally overwhelmed is medically known as globus pharyngeus. It is an automatic response of the body to emotional stress in which the throat muscles attempt to close while the glottis, the part of the larynx where the vocal cords are located, remains open. The British submarine HMS Artful can remain submerged for up to 25 years without having to surface for air, but I suppose the people inside would not have a very good time for that many years. In Japan, it is a common practice to make art with the different colored leaves that fall from trees. It is called ochiba, and they generally recreate cartoon characters. Cats sleep an average of between 12 and 16 hours a day. This amount of sleep is due to their nature as hunters, since they are more active during dawn and dusk. Some cats, especially younger or older ones, may sleep even longer. Pizza Hut launched a pizza with a double crust in Singapore. They called it Double Sensation and promoted it as a pizza inside a pizza, but people thought it was just an excuse to use fewer ingredients. There is a specific area of the brain called the vomiting center in the medulla oblongata that notices when the stomach does not feel well and makes the decision whether to vomit or not vomit. In the 1950s, television programs were forbidden from saying the word pregnant because it was considered indecent. At that time, American television followed very strict censorship codes and avoided any direct reference to pregnancy. Even in popular series, when a character was expecting a child, euphemisms such as "she is expecting" were used to avoid making the audience uncomfortable. Jupiter is the fastest spinning planet in the solar system. Due to the intensity of its rotational movement, the planet is flatter at the poles than at the equator. It takes just under 10 hours to complete one rotation. Soccer player Cristiano Ronaldo gave his agent a Greek island as a wedding gift. Coral is classified as an animal and not as a plant by scientists. It belongs to the group of cnidarians, the same group as jellyfish and sea anemones, and is made up of tiny organisms called polyps. Although many species host algae that perform photosynthesis, coral itself feeds by capturing small particles with its tentacles. Psychologists analyzed internet trolls and discovered that they show narcissistic, psychopathic, and sadistic traits. In the movie Final Fantasy VII Advent Children, the phone used by Cloud is a Panasonic P900, which was released alongside the film with an advertising campaign in Japan, and included a special Final Fantasy game exclusive to that phone. The astronauts of Apollo 11 have a moon on the Hollywood Walk of Fame instead of a star. In 2013, Yuichiro Miura, a Japanese man 80 years old, became the oldest person to climb to the summit of Mount Everest. He reached the peak on May 23 after rigorous medical preparation, despite having undergone heart surgeries years earlier. One day, some cool parents allowed their 8-year-old son to change his name to whatever he wanted. Today, he is known as Dr. Loki Sky Lizard. the coolest name in the world. Many fans of the video game Grand Theft Auto 5 guessed the map of Grand Theft Auto 5 with extremely high accuracy just by watching promotional commercials before the game was released. Around 2,000 years ago, the Roman Emperor Caligula, known for his eccentricities, appointed his horse Incitatus as consul of Rome. It is said that he even built him a palace and provided him with a staff of servants. This act was likely satire meant to ridicule the Roman Senate, rather than a sign of madness. Sharks can detect the heartbeats of fish before attacking. They have sensory organs called the ampullae of Lorenzini that allow them to perceive tiny electrical signals produced by the muscular and nervous activity of their prey. This ability is so precise that they can locate animals hidden under the sand even with almost no visibility. A truck driver from New Zealand accidentally fell into a high-pressure air valve that inflated him to nearly twice his size, just like in cartoons. Miraculously, he survived, but he spent days releasing gas from all over his body. The only Pixar film in which the Pizza Planet truck does not appear is The Incredibles. Fans have speculated that, in the time period in which the film is set, that pizzeria did not yet exist, or that there is a cloud shaped like the truck. But the truth is that the Easter egg had not yet been fully established, because in The Incredibles 2, it does appear. When he was 7 years old, Vin Diesel, along with his friends, broke into a theater in New York with the intention of vandalizing it. Instead of calling the police, the artistic director gave them scripts to perform in a show. From that moment on, Diesel liked acting. To showcase the power of the Nintendo GameCube console when it was launched, they presented a demo featuring 128 Mario models rendered in real time performing different activities. It never became a video game, but the technology was used to create the game Pikmin. In psychological studies, people were shown fake Disneyland commercials featuring Bugs Bunny. Many later claimed to remember meeting the rabbit during their visit to the amusement park, even though he has never been there because he belongs to Warner and not Disney. People have been making counterfeit money since the first coins were created using common metal. Being a counterfeiter is considered the second oldest profession in the world. The president of Ecuador offered the United States the opportunity to have an air base in his country, but only if Ecuador could have one in Miami. The turtles that appear in the first Rocky movie from 1976 are the pets of actor Sylvester Stallone, and they are the same ones that appeared years later in Rocky Balboa in 2006 and in Creed 2 in 2018. Staff at Pixar Studios spent 3 years studying the physics of curly hair in order to properly represent Merida's hair in the movie Brave. Emilia Clarke, who plays Daenerys Targaryen in the series Game of Thrones, was covered with such a large amount of fake blood during a scene that, during a break, she got stuck to a toilet seat. The main airline of Hawaii lets you travel with a box of pineapples or papayas for free on any flight departing from the island. Since 1991, Bangladesh has mostly had women serving as prime minister, mainly Sheikh Hasina and Khalida Zia, who have alternated in power for decades. In the city of Wujiang in China, there is a highway that runs directly above many apartment buildings. It was completed in 1997, and after years of complaints from residents, heavy trucks were banned from using it, and lighter trucks were restricted. There are Antarctic dollars. However, they are only collectible bills with no legal value in Antarctica or anywhere else in the world. They are sold by a website that also offers fictitious currency and insignias from other places, and currently, in 2024, they are not accepting new orders because they could not keep up with demand. Pirates wore earrings because they believed it helped them see better. According to studies, playing action video games helps people make decisions faster. It also increases sensitivity to stimuli in the field of vision, which helps with multitasking activities such as driving. In athletics, if you start moving at the exact same time the starting gun fires, it is considered a false start. This is because the human brain cannot process the sound of the gun until after 0.1 seconds. In 2016, scientists discovered a massive coral reef at the mouth of the Amazon River, covering more than 1,930 square miles. The Elizabeth Tower in London, which houses the Big Ben Bell, is slowly leaning. Experts estimate that it could reach the same angle as the Tower of Pisa in 4,000 years. Dehydrating fruit removes between 30 and 80% of its nutrients and antioxidants. In 1907, Theodore Roosevelt shook hands with 8,510 people, a record that remained unbroken for nearly 70 years. In case you ever wondered, on planet Earth, there are 7.5 quintillion grains of sand. That is like 17 zeros in that number. Whoever counted them must have a lot of patience. William Shakespeare got married at 18 to a woman older than him who was also 3 months pregnant. During the First World War, the famous magician Harry Houdini took a year off to dedicate himself to teaching American soldiers how to escape from the handcuffs used by German soldiers. The corn needed to fill a gas tank with biofuel is enough to feed one person for an entire year. A person who really likes corn. The first functional sewing machine that imitated hand stitching was invented in France in 1830 by a tailor named Barthélemy Timonier. When other tailors in the area learned about it, they burned down the factory out of fear that the machine would leave them without work. But that did not stop the invention from becoming popular. Months after the Harry Potter film was released, it was reported that many animal shelters in England had to take in hundreds of pet owls that had been abandoned by their owners. Coffee is the second most valuable product traded in the world, only after oil. For 249 years, the tallest structure in the world was Lincoln Cathedral. It achieved that distinction in the 14th century when its central spire surpassed the height of the Great Pyramid of Giza. It is estimated to have measured around 525 feet, but the spire collapsed in the 16th century, causing it to lose the record it had held for centuries. The longest jellyfish in the world, the so-called lion's mane, can grow longer than a blue whale. The river spirit scene in the animated film Spirited Away was directly inspired by an event in director Hayao Miyazaki's life. While helping clean a river near where he lived, he found a bicycle, but when they tried to remove it, they realized it was trapped under layers of dirt and required great effort to free it. The scopitone, created in France in the 1960s, was the ancestor of the modern music video. It was a kind of jukebox with a screen that played 16mm musical films while the song played. Some famous artists recorded videos exclusively for these machines, which were installed in bars and cafes. In 1949, a member of the Parliament of New Zealand was accused of using unparliamentary language after telling another member that his brain could spin inside a peanut shell for thousands of years without touching the sides. All electric trains in the Netherlands run on wind energy. They provide service to more than 60,000 people daily. The sense of touch is so powerful that if your finger were the size of the world, you could feel the difference between a house and a car. Charles Darwin died from unknown illnesses at that time that he contracted during his famous 5-year expeditions. There is a goat rental service that many companies use to eliminate invasive plants as an alternative to using machinery or pesticides. It is believed that we will surpass the barrier of 10 billion humans on the planet before the year 2080. Demographic projections from international organizations indicate that global growth is slowing down, but even so, the population could approach that threshold toward the second half of the century. Redheads experience more pain and require approximately 20% more anesthesia during surgery because the gene that causes that hair color also influences pain receptors in the body. The Japanese city of Tokyo used to be called Edo until 1868. Tokyo means Eastern Capital. The thief from Minnesota was caught because he decided to open his Facebook account in the home he chose to rob. When the homeowner returned, the session was still open. That really is another level of super genius. Attacking a parachutist who has escaped from an aircraft in distress while they are descending is considered a war crime. In many countries, it is illegal to ride a motorcycle between two cars that are traveling in their respective lanes. This practice, known as filtering or lane splitting, has very different regulations depending on the region. In some places, it is completely prohibited, while in others, it is allowed under certain speed and safety conditions. There is a mountain bike race held underwater in Wales, United Kingdom. Archaeologists claim that at Stonehenge, those oddly arranged stones in the middle of nowhere in the United Kingdom, there were more than 150 cremation burials in ancient times. Apparently, it was the largest cemetery in Great Britain at that time. The first television remote controls worked with a spring-loaded hammer that struck a solid aluminum rod inside the device, which emitted a sound at an ultrasonic frequency that the television could detect. This allowed them to function without batteries, and each button emitted a different tone for different functions. In the film The Substance, to make the scene in which shrimp are eaten as repulsive as possible, Actor Dennis Quaid consumed approximately 2 kilograms of shrimp during the different takes. This was according to an interview with director Coralie Farge. A flame in space appears blue and round due to the lack of gravity. In microgravity, such as on the International Space Station, hot air does not rise, so combustion does not form the typical elongated flame. Instead, oxygen surrounds the fuel evenly and produces a spherical flame, smaller and cleaner with less soot generation. A large Starbucks coffee has 4 times the amount of caffeine contained in a Red Bull energy drink. Rats can fall from a 5-story building and not suffer major injuries. Their low body weight and ability to spread their legs reduce their terminal velocity, which lessens the impact. In addition, their flexible skeleton helps absorb the fall, although from greater heights they can also be injured. Robin Williams performed comedy shows at a nightclub in Seattle in 2004, 2007, and 2008 to donate all the profits, which were about $50,000, to a shelter anonymously. Actor Matt Damon refused to lend his voice and likeness to the video game The Bourne Conspiracy from the Jason Bourne film series that he starred in because he wanted it to be more like the game Myst, which focuses on puzzles and solving riddles. Instead, it was developed as a first-person shooter. The film The Room by Tommy Wiseau, which has fans around the world because they consider it so bad that it is good, was the first movie to be filmed simultaneously on 35mm film and high-definition digital in the year 2003, which increased the budget by thousands of dollars. Haiti and Liechtenstein had very similar flags. The two countries did not realize this until they met at the Olympic Games in 1936. Some historians believe that Christopher Columbus visited a peninsula in Iceland in 1477 during one of his voyages, and that it was there where he learned about the Viking explorations in the New World. Later on, he carried out his own because he wanted to be popular. There is only one university in Greenland, located in the capital, Nuuk, where there are around 200 students and fewer than 20 staff members, including teachers and maintenance personnel. This low number is due to the fact that most students from Greenland attend university in Denmark on a full government scholarship. In the 17th century, there was a tradition in England in which women prepared bread to seduce the man they liked. The secret was that before baking it, they would rub the dough on their intimate parts. The British make so much tea after the television series EastEnders ends in the evenings that an increase in electricity consumption has been observed across the grid in the United Kingdom due to electric kettles. It is so significant that backup power stations are kept ready at that time. Hemineglect, or hemianopsia, is a neurological disorder that results from a brain injury. Those who suffer from it do things only on one side without realizing it. They may shave only one side of their face, eat from only one side of the plate, and write on only one side of the page without noticing it. The most expensive guitar of all time was sold at auction in 2005 for $2.7 million to raise funds for the victims of the 2004 tsunami. The movie Joker Folie à Deux, which is the first sequel in actor Joaquin Phoenix's career, became the superhero film with the largest box office drop between its first and second weekend, with an 81.4% decline, surpassing the record of The Marvels with 78.1%. In addition, it received a D rating from CinemaScore, the worst ever given to a superhero film. The song All By Myself by Eric Carmen, which has been covered by many artists such as Celine Dion, uses the melody of a classical piece by the Russian composer Rachmaninoff, since Carmen believed it was in the public domain when he composed it. However, that only applied in the United States, so he later had to share credit and 12% of all royalties. In Hawaii, there is a clock on a pole that stopped at 1:04 in the morning in 1960 when a tsunami reached that area. The clock is now preserved as a monument in commemoration of the victims of that day. In Sweden and Finland, girls celebrate Easter by dressing up as witches and going door to door asking for candy, similar to Halloween. This tradition dates back to the 17th century witch trials, when it was believed that witches would fly during those days and people stayed inside their homes to protect themselves. Barns are traditionally red because farmers used to apply oxidation to them to prevent fungi and mold from forming. The most profitable area of supermarkets is the checkout zone, where they place all the candy and chocolate, and you cannot resist buying something from there, even though you know they do it completely on purpose. Evil. The Romans boiled must, which is unfiltered grape juice, in lead pots to create a syrup called sapa. During this process, the acid in the must reacted with the lead, forming lead acetate, also known as sugar of lead, which had a sweet taste. They used it to sweeten inferior wines and foods, since at that time they had few sweeteners besides honey, with the small detail that this process made the wine toxic. Weather modification is prohibited in warfare. This was established after the United States used this resource during the Vietnam War. A study conducted in 2013 indicated that less attractive people were more likely to suffer bullying in the workplace. In the 16th century in Europe, it was believed that eating a tomato could turn you into a werewolf. There was a time millions of years ago when trees that dried out did not decompose and reintegrate into the environment because the microorganisms that digest wood had not yet evolved. This caused forests to become areas completely covered with layers of wood, which often led to massive fires. Much of the coal consumed today was formed during that time. Julian Assange, the founder of WikiLeaks, appeared in an episode of The Simpsons in 2012, where he recorded his lines while under house arrest in Great Britain. And, since he did not have audio equipment, he recorded them directly over the phone. African elephants can disperse more than 2,000 seeds from different plants per square kilometer each day through their dung. On average, a tree is made up of 99% dead cells. Only 1% is alive. That percentage consists of the leaves, the tips of the roots, and the system that carries water to the top. Throwing golf balls into the ocean is prohibited because the plastic does not reintegrate into nature. There is an effort to ensure that balls used on cruises or on golf courses near the ocean are made with lobster shells and other biodegradable materials. According to research, taking too many photos can harm our ability to retain memories, since it creates a distraction that prevents us from remembering information in detail as we normally would. This phenomenon is known as the photo-taking impairment effect. They could have given it a more creative name. The President of the United States in 1881, James Garfield, in addition to knowing English, knew Greek and Latin, and had the ability to write with one hand in one language and with the other hand in another language at the same time, because he was ambidextrous. The entire 1985 game Super Mario Bros. Takes up only 40 kilobytes of memory. A single frame of this video takes up more memory, and there are about 30 each second. It is impossible for humans to digest grass, since we do not have the necessary compounds to break down the cellulose found in the plant. If Apple finds an underage worker in any of its component supplier factories in China, they require the factory to return the child to their home, pay for their education and basic needs until they are of legal working age, and also guarantee them a position so they can return to work there. In Inca mythology, there is a goddess of potatoes. Potatoes formed a vital part of the Inca food supply, with many varieties of different flavors and colors. And in each village, they would often keep potatoes with particular shapes to worship and ask for a good harvest. Butterfly McQueen, who is part of the cast of the movie Gone with the Wind, could not attend the premiere because it was held in a theater that prohibited entry to African Americans. At the Umakara Ramen restaurant in Tokyo, Japan, they can pay you 50,000 yen if you finish their largest dish in less than 20 minutes. It is not recommended to shower during a thunderstorm, since an electrical discharge can travel through the pipes and through the water if lightning strikes the house or building. The risk is greater if there is a metal plumbing system. The facial recognition algorithms used by Facebook are better than those used by the FBI. The Pentagon is developing combat chewing gum for soldiers that will help maintain dental hygiene, which will save millions in dental services. Bats cannot walk. The bones in their legs are very weak. Fidel Castro banned the Beatles and other bands in Cuba in 1964, but then changed his mind 2 years later. The genetic marks left by a traumatic experience in mice are inherited by at least 2 subsequent generations. Rats arrived in North America in the 18th century, hidden in transport ships. They were mainly black rats and later brown rats, which traveled in shipments of food and goods. In France, there is a vending machine that, instead of selling junk food, gives you short stories that can be 1, 3, or 5 minutes long. It exists to promote reading and to give people a break from social media. There is a beetle that is like a traffic light that captures its prey by turning off its yellow lights and leaving only the red ones on, which centipedes cannot see. The Bechstein piano used to record the Beatles song Hey Jude at Trident Studios in London is considered the most important piano in rock history, since it was also used to record other famous songs such as Killer Queen by Queen, Space Oddity by David Bowie, Perfect Day by Lou Reed, and many others. When the studio changed locations, the piano fell from a crane and was destroyed, and was later restored and sold for $400,000. Some people describe certain edible worms as having a flavor similar to fried bacon when they are roasted or fried. In different cultures, they are part of traditional diets and provide protein, fats, and minerals. The series Game of Thrones uses the same studio where the Titanic was built to film some scenes. Not the one from the movie, but the real Titanic. The little boy in the movie The Shining had no idea he was acting in a horror film until sometime after it was finished and released. Gorillas can catch the flu and other diseases directly from humans. Designer Susan McClary created jewelry that grows as it is worn, using small plants from her greenhouse. In Saudi Arabia, it is forbidden for a man to work in a lingerie store. A baby octopus can be so small that it can fit on the tip of your finger.
If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like it and share it with your friends. Subscribe so you don't miss more interesting content. Leave your comments and click on any of these videos. See you next time.